Hi everybody, this is Dr. Terri Messman Moore, and in this video I want to talk about the mental status examination, which is one form of assessment when we're working with clients in hospitals or other settings. The focus on the mental status examination is important because the book doesn't cover a lot of this information. So coming back to where we were talking about before, there are many different types of assessment, and depending on the purpose and the reason why individuals are seeking intervention or assessment, we may use a variety of these instruments and approaches. In a previous video, I talked about the importance of a physical exam and how that helps to rule out potential medical explanations for psychological phenomena or symptoms. The book talks more about neurological exams, neuropsychological assessment, and different forms of psychological assessment. In this video, I want to talk more about the mental status exam, its purpose, and what it consists of. So the mental status exam includes several things, and there are many domains within the exam. So I'm going to cover some of these domains. Now you should realize that the mental status exam is not necessarily standardized, which means that it's not the same always from administration to administration, from context to context. So I'm giving you a broad overview, but in some cases, certain components of the mental status exam would be added or not used depending on where you're working with your patients. So in most cases, the mental status exam is being used in medical and psychiatric settings, although it can be adapted for use in outpatient psychotherapy, particularly during intake process. So the first area that I want to cover is orientation and alertness. And orientation and alertness is a very basic assessment, and again, it's often much more called for or indicated when we're dealing with a patient who might be very impaired. So for example, patients who do not appear to understand where they are, they may be delirious, there may be some signs of dementia or significant mood impairment, or perhaps when individuals maybe appear to be intoxicated or under the influence of some sort of substances. So the general approach to assessing orientation is to assess for person, place, and time. And what person means is we ask them who they are, what their name is. For place, we ask, do they know where they are? And for time, we ask them the date, the day of the week, the year, and sometimes the time. So you might be thinking, you might not always know what time it is or even what date it is, but we're really looking to see how close the client can be accurate. At very high levels of delirium, for example, they will not know who they are, where they are, or what day or year it is. But in other cases, like in the case with dementia, or even with psychotic disorders, individuals may claim that the year is something much farther in the past. So for example, they might say instead of 2020, they might say 1973. So when that happens, we know that there's a significant process at play and we need to do further assessment. Alertness is just what it sounds like. So again, does the person seem awake? Are they unconscious? Are they sleepy, in a stupor? Those types of things. Appearance is also very helpful in promoting our understanding of where our client is in terms of their psychological health and well-being. Now, appearance, again, you may think this seems judgmental, and we're not really commenting on the appearance in terms of how attractive someone is. Instead, what we're interested in is looking for clues in their appearance that might give us a sense of their level of functioning. So, for example, their dress. Is the individual dressed appropriately for the weather, for example? You might want to make note if your client comes in and they're dressed in a heavy winter coat, but it's 90 degrees outside and it's July. That would suggest something might be happening that we want to assess further. Hygiene is another example. If individuals are disheveled, if they do not appear to have bathed for some time, even if they do have access to bathrooms and showers, that would be important to note. Individuals who are developing in the prodromal phase of schizophrenia, for example, may start to neglect their hygiene far before other symptoms like hallucinations start to appear. So again, dress and hygiene and appearance are really meant to help give us information that could be used for a diagnosis. We're not making judgments about how attractive they are, what their clothing is, or anything like that. Speech is just what it sounds like. So when we talk with someone, we can get clues to their mental health and well-being based on their speech, including their tone, the tone of voice, the rate of speech, variability in prosody, meaning does their voice go up when they're talking about something, or does it go down? For example, when they ask a question, do we see inflection, or we hear inflection in the voice? And also articulation is very important. So for individuals who are under the influence of substances or who may be in a delirium, we might expect that there would be poor articulation, like slurred speech. We might expect that the rate of speech would be very low. In contrast, if someone is in the midst of a manic phase during the course of a bipolar illness, we might witness a very rapid rate of speech where the person's speech almost seems pressured, like they can't get it out quickly enough. We also may see, difficulty with variability depending on if someone is in a very depressed state or a very flat affect. They might have a very monotone voice. And finally, we can make or infer from the tone of voice someone's emotional experience and their affect. So individuals who are speaking in very sharp or angry tones give us a clue about their mental health and well-being at that point. Mood and affect is a very critical part of the mental status exam. Because mood disorders and anxiety disorders are so common, it's really important that we do a thorough assessment of mood and affect. Now, mood and affect both are related to states of feelings or emotions, but mood is what the person reports they are feeling. It is their subjective state of their emotional experience. Depending on our client's emotional intelligence and emotional awareness, they may vary in what they can articulate or describe to us in terms of their mood. Some people may be able to say, I'm feeling very depressed, I'm feeling despondent, I'm feeling very anxious. But others may not have that vocabulary, so they may be saying things like, I feel bad, I feel scared, and those types of things. So again, mood is a subjective state that our client is reporting to us. Affect is the appearance of emotions in the body and in the face. So often we're focusing on facial expressions, but we also can be looking at body language. So affect is an objective assessment of someone's internal mood state. It is what we are observing. So mood and affect can and should frequently exist in a way that they look connected. So there are times, however, when mood and affect don't seem to match. So if a person is reporting feeling sad, or they're discussing a sad memory, for example, the death of a loved one, but they're laughing while they tell us that is really important to note. It can be indicative of a psychotic state or another problem. So when mood and affect match, when a person says they're sad and they look sad, like they're crying in the interview, we would say the mood and affect is congruent. When mood and affect don't match, for example, someone is talking about the death of a loved one, but they're laughing, we would describe the mood and affect as incongruent. Beyond congruence, we're also looking to describe the nature of the affect. Again, this is what we are witnessing or observing as the interviewer. And there are about 4 different labels or descriptions that we'll use to describe affect, again, in a clinical way so that other clinicians can understand our assessment. First is flat or blunted affect. This is just what it sounds like. The person isn't showing a lot of emotion in their face. We're not seeing a lot of inflection in their speech. Flat is just a little bit more extreme than blunted. The individual may appear to be zoned out, like a zombie, or like they're not present. Another way to describe affect is constricted. Constricted affect gives us some clues to the mood state of our client, but what they're trying to do is control their appearance or the affect that's on their face or in their body. So this is typically witnessed when we have a client who reports feeling sad but is trying to keep themselves from crying. So maybe they're batting their eyes or looking away or trying to do things to keep themselves from really crying and what they might say is breaking down. So constricted affect is when our client is making efforts to shift what they are projecting or what the affect looks like to others. Third, we have labile affect. Labile means that the affect is moving up and down or back and forth between different extreme states in the same interview or in a certain circumscribed period of time. So most people don't have labile affect. If they're feeling sad, they will consistently look and talk and behave as if they're feeling sad. But some individuals who are in the throes of particular disorders, such as psychotic disorders or even mood disorders like bipolar, may be very labile, meaning that they're maybe laughing one minute and crying the next, or angry and then sad, and it's moving around a lot and it's extreme. Finally, we have the label of whether affect is appropriate or inappropriate. Inappropriate affect occurs when someone is talking about something or relaying information that does not appear to be connected to their outward expression of emotion. So, for example, if someone is talking about a serious subject like their partner or their marriage, and then they start giggling when their presenting problem was marital conflict, we might say that's inappropriate affect. Sometimes we'll see inappropriate affect in relation to particular contexts. So, for example, if someone is in a legal situation, let's say in a courtroom, and they start laughing uncontrollably, that would be inappropriate affect. So when we're labeling affect as appropriate or inappropriate, it's a little bit like looking for congruence. But congruence is the agreement between mood and affect, what they report they're feeling and what we observe. Appropriateness is the connection between their affect and the situation. So someone could have congruent mood and affect, but still have inappropriate affect because they're giggling during a very somber occasion, for example, even though they might report that they're feeling like something is funny or they're amused. So there's congruence between mood and affect. That affect of giggling during a somber occasion, let's say during a religious service, would still be inappropriate. So there are other components of the mental status exam beyond those that I covered here on this slide. So this is the end of this section or this video on the mental status exam. I hope this was helpful for you as you're learning to identify components of the mental status exam and also understand why we look for the things we do. Thanks for listening.